What's going on, everybody? This is your man, Big Stu, Scott Stewart or Professor Stewart, depending on how you know me. And we are back for another edition of Dope People, the Dope People podcast. And we are not letting you down again. I have to give thanks to God for putting it on me to even do this thing. You know, Vondale, normally I get an idea. It takes me a few months to get to it. You know, I gotta plan it out. I gotta make sure stuff is right.
Wow.
And the caliber of guests that have been on the show, you are proof of the caliber of guests that we have had on. Tonight, I want to introduce you tonight, this morning, wherever you are in the world, the founder and CEO of, get this, y'all. let me say it again, in case you just getting in your whip. The founder and the CEO of the Gold Star award-winning C.H.A.M.P.S mentoring program, Mr. Vondale Singleton is in the building.
Oh, that's good.
Wow.
Yes, sir. Thank you, man, for that introduction.
What's up, my brother?
Man, I'm glad to be alive, bro. Just taking it one day at a time and just honored, man, to be on the earth, understanding what my purpose is, brother.
You are in your bag, as they say. Some people say being in your bag is, you know, about money. I think it's way more than that. When you are in your purpose, you are in your bag. It is your season, and it's been your season for a few seasons. That's because you are in your purpose.
That's it.
My man.
That's it.
Vondale, I met you. I was introduced to you. I don't even remember who introduced me to you. They gave me a call. I was traveling on the East Coast at the time. I was in Baltimore, B-more. I'm like, you gotta call Vondale. Yeah, y'all two peas in the pods. Oh, I know who it was. It was the CEO of
Noble Network.
The CEO of Noble Network.
Yes.
She said, you gotta call Vondale Singleton. He's the guy for what you want to talk about and get with. She gave me a number. And I called you. I was out on the East Coast. This was 2018. And you picked up. You took my call, man. And you've invited me to your classroom. You've invited me to a couple of events. I've been following you. I'm in awe. I've been so much in awe in you. I had to stop following you at one point because I was just following you. I said, man, if I keep following this dude, I'm going to be doing what he's doing. And I got to stay true to myself.
I know that's right.
So I said, let me turn this dude off and go to work. Sheesh. On fire. But before we get into it, man, every episode, we warm the crowd up. Everybody may not, as popular as you are, everybody might not know who you are. So we're going to get them warmed up with a friendly game of this or that. Are you familiar with this or that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Nothing incriminating. I ain't going to get you put out the house. I ain't going to get you. Ain't nothing. I ain't no setups here. I ain't on that.
No, you good, bro.
Still coming through, set me up with this or that. No, man, it's fine, man. Are you ready? Let the people know.
I'm ready, man.
Okay, all right. Let's go easy in the beginning.
Let's go.
When it comes to pizza, deep dish or thin crust?
Thin crust.
Thin crust. Okay. I think I know this next one, but I ain't gonna. I decided to not assume. LeBron or MJ?
MJ all day. No question.
I knew it. That was a slam dunk. No pun intended. Hip hop or gospel?
Gospel.
They ain't see that coming. when it comes to the type of people you want to work with, planners or doers?
Doers.
When it comes to working with the young people, in person or virtual?
In person for sure.
When it comes to teaching, traditional classroom environments or e-learning?
Traditional classrooms with a little e-learning on the side.
So you're going a little hybrid. You do a little hybrid.
Yeah.
A little hybrid. All right, this is the last one. Teachers or principals?
Ooh, you got me on that one.
Yeah, that's the one.
I've been both. I'll say teachers.
Wow. Hands down, every single person I've asked that question, they always say teachers. And I've had some principals on here, people who've been principals. They always say teachers. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think every principal should be able to teach. And so the foundation of principalship, I think, starts with the foundation of teaching. And so, no matter how high you go, sometimes going back to its roots, foundation for me is always just teaching.
That's interesting. So, Vondale, before we get into the meeting, thank you for being such a gracious participant in that series of this or that. Where you from, man? You born and raised in Chicago, or you not from Chicago?
No, I'm born and raised in Bronzeville community, Cook County Hospital, third generational Outer B. Wells housing project kid, low end to no end.
Low end to no end. Wow, give it up for the low end and no end.
Low end and no end, that's right.
He dating himself, people. You might know it. You don't know, now you know. I know a little bit about your background. You have a hell of a story. How did you find yourself to be the CEO and founder of the Gold Star Award-winning C.H.A.M.P.S mentoring program? And tell them, and before, what does C.H.A.M.P stand for?
Yeah, C.H.A.M.P stands for culturally helping and making positive success.
Culturally helping and making positive success. How did you become the founder and CEO of C.H.A.M.P.S mentoring?
It definitely started, I would say, with just my personal experience of mentorship. I had a mentor when I was 17. And as you alluded to, I've seen some things, experienced a lot of trauma as a child, losing my mom at an early age. My mom, struggled with crack cocaine addiction in the mid 80s. Father, he was, incarcerated. He was trying to do the best that he could. He selling drugs and various things, doing drugs and you name it. And at the point in my life when I was 17, my father was locked up. My mom was dead. I was awarded a state, and that was through a mentor. He helped me discover my purpose, and he provided me an opportunity of exposure that actually changed the trajectory of my life when I was 17. I was a flight to San Francisco. And the rest, as they say, was history. I was within a year, I was enrolled in college, Oral Roberts in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And then I was the first one out of my family to graduate 4 years later. But before I walked the stage, I called that mentor up who gave me the gift. I call it the gift of exposure, by allowing me to fly on that plane to see outside of the little box that I was already accustomed to. And I called him up. I said, Steve, his name's Steve Robertson. I said, what do I need to do to pay you back for what you've done for me? I wouldn't be in this position had you not provided opportunities of exposure. And quite simply, he said, the same thing I did for you, do for somebody else. And right there, I believe that was the DNA stamped on my heart that I was supposed to give back through the power of mentorship. And, went through education the traditional way. My wife and I, we were both education majors. Then once we graduated, we went into education field. And I said, at some point, I had to figure out a way to pay my mentor back specifically. And that's when Champs was birthed. It started some years later, but that phone call and asking him, how do I pay him back for what he did for me, is kind of what led me to start Champs years later.
Wow. Wow. Give it up for Steve, man. Shout out to
Steve
Steve, giving
Robinson.
you the gift of exposure. Shout out to your wife, man. I hear you talk about your wife a lot more than most dudes talk about their significant others. Shout out to your wife, man, because she sounds
No
like
questions.
the type of woman that all of us brothers should be striving to have by
Yeah.
our side. And I've been married, and I understand how relationships work. So I know it ain't always easy, but it sounds like it's
Yeah.
worth it for sure.
No questions. No questions at all. Not,
Yeah.
and as I talk about, my wife, I also talk about the inception. I talk about the beginning. I talk about the foundation of our relationship. We were both, majoring in education at the time, both friends, and later began to date our junior year in college. But it was a foundation based upon principles. We committed not to have sex before marriage, and we were able to fulfill that. We committed that we were going to graduate from college before we got married, and we committed to do that. And my wife, she tirelessly worked from undergrad, from the time I met her, and she became a teacher. And while she was a teacher, she worked on her master's and worked on her doctorate degree. And she was a school principal at the same time my daughter was born. So she's superwoman to me. Incredible, incredible person, and is a phenomenal Chicago public school principal to this day.
Wow.
But I wouldn't be able to be completely the man that I am without her. So anytime I get the opportunity, I always like to give my wife a huge shout out. She's upstairs working right now on the principal call. So, but she allows me the freedom and flexibility to walk in my gift and my call, especially in giving back to boys and young men of color. So, yeah, shout out to Dr. Singleton.
Shout out to Dr. Singleton. Man, that's phenomenal. That's great to hear. We need to highlight these stories about Black love and relationships that are working. So that's good to hear. Let's back up a little bit. Let's back up to this low end to no end, low end or no end. And what kind of student were you, man? In in grammar
Man,
school and high school, man.
Man, I went to a school where my father and my entire family went. It was a school. They have one version of the school, but it was two. It was Doolittle East and Doolittle West. It's urban prep right now in the Bronzeville area, right off 35th and Rhodes. But my entire family, for the most part, went to the school. My father was the youngest of nine, and I believe we had the same kindergarten teacher. As a matter of fact, the first day
Mm.
of public school for me, it was just like, hey, she like a second mom to me. And second mom to me, when you're young, it seemed like people look a lot older. She was about 60 years old. She was probably in her 30s. I don't know. But she
Right,
seemed
right,
like a
right.
grandma to me. But she was like, hey, you better not use any foul language in my class. I'll wash your mouth out with soap. That's the first time I
Wow.
heard that, and it scared me to death. I don't think I
Wow.
said about two words that whole entire year kindergarten class. And
Wow.
everywhere I went, people were like, "Oh yeah, I know your auntie. Your auntie went to school here. Your uncle, went to school here. I had your daddy, so we know your whole family. We ain't gonna have no problems out of you."
Right.
And so school, in a lot of ways, in the beginning, it was like this place where it was familial. It was a place of safety for me and comfort, and a place where people knew me because they knew of my family. But that all changed, once we started to learn and discover that the projects were going to be torn down. And we were there. My grandfather, like I mentioned, my father lived there. My mother's side of the family lived there, and then we moved over to Stateway Gardens. And Stateway Gardens, in and of itself, was a whole totally different experience in terms of the family breaking down. My grandfather, who was the patriarch of the family, moved to California, and and I just saw a dissension with the children of the family. My aunts and my uncles really struggle, and they struggle with identity. They struggle with just making ends meet, having consistent job, and providing for kids like myself and my other cousins who were coming up at the time. Then, as I mentioned earlier, my mom struggled with a crack cocaine addiction, and it really took a toll personally on me. My brother was a little bit younger, but I was 5 years older than my brother, and I saw some things, was exposed to a lot of different things that kind of messed my head up as a little kid. But we don't always have the language to articulate our experiences when we're that young, and so we take it all in the heart, and we take it in our mind, and we try to make sense. But the biggest thing was, I had a lot of walls up to protect myself from the environment that I was in. But one thing that my father did tell me, he said, "Son, I want you to go to school. I want you to do what's right. What I'm doing, I'm trying to take care of you." And I'll never forget those conversations. And so, as a kid, I knew in the back of my mind, although it wasn't a lot of examples, Brother Scott, that was in front of me in terms of high level education, I knew that school would be the vehicle that would get me out of my situation. So I wasn't the greatest of students. I was smart, but I wasn't hardworking. And part of that was because I didn't have an environment that was conducive to help me be disciplined. So I was naturally smart and gifted. I was in the gifted classes and all of that. But I wasn't using my optimum strength in terms of reinforcing what I was learning. And so I was passed along. I remember I was maybe in third or fourth grade, and I missed about 50, 60 days of school, and they passed me on to the next grade. And I'll never forget my aunt in Stateway Garden. She had, back in the days, it was something for the listening audience called food stamps. I think they use link cards now or something, but it was something called food stamps.
EBT, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
EBT. And so my aunt, she said, "Hey, I want you to go across the street, get some milk and get some cereal and bring me my change back." It was like $8 and some change. Man, back in the day where it was real truancy, where Chicago police would pick you up and take you to school. This was during school time, and I'll never forget them picking me up and taking me, and I saw my aunt looking out the Stateway Gardens window while this happened. Went to school,
Wow.
nappy head, snotty nose, going in with the little money. And it was must have been about 9:30, 10 o'clock. So I was already a few hours late. And it was one of the most embarrassing moments of my entire life as a kid, being taken into the school for truancy by police officers, Chicago police officers. And when I got back, when I walked through the door, the first thing that my auntie said, "Boy, you better not have spent my money. Give me my money, because I know you ain't come back with no milk," because I saw what happened. And it
Mm.
was just like this harshness. And I was just like, wow, welcome to Chicago. And if a kid can make it through this, you can make it through anything in life. And those who know. So
Man,
yeah,
that's
school later
phenomenal,
became
man.
a major refuge for me as I got older. But in the beginning, there was some really, really tough spots.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You opened up with that, and I appreciate you being transparent and vulnerable to share that. Everybody doesn't have that self-awareness and that willingness to share. What point? At what point did you like? What? There's so many questions. How did you develop that self-awareness in yourself to one be able to appreciate those experiences and share your past? What happened with you along your journey to get you to that point?
Yeah, I know for everybody it's different, but for me, I think the biggest lessons that made me aware, and gave me kind of this attitude that I will make it. I saw a lot of bad examples, and I learned from them. So, for instance, my family, you know, when they got together a lot of times, and I'm not gonna call out my aunts and uncles' names because sometimes people think that, oh man, he throwing people under the bus. Well, they not alive anyway. But the bottom line is, you know, the family would come around and then they would drink a lot
Mm.
and they would become an intoxicated family. And usually when intoxication happened in my home, they would actually start to fight each other. It was always a fight that broke out, and it was very violent. It was very destructive in behavior. It was very contentious, and as a young boy, it scared me. I was afraid being in those houses and environments, and I would watch. You know, back in the days, it was like the old English, you know, with the brown paper bag. They start drinking that. Then next thing you know is whiskey and Seagram's gin. And then the liquor got harder and harder. And it was like people started to get out of control and would fight each other and pull knives out and cut each other and run out and the door be wide open at 10 o'clock at, at night. Just like crazy stuff. And so what I learned was, okay, no knock against anybody else that drinks, smoke, or whatever they do, but I knew that I couldn't do it for me because I saw the lack of control that it had on my family. And so that caused me to be aware. It was just like, you're not bigger than certain things. It's certain things that you shouldn't involve yourself with, that if you try to, this could be the result. And every time, and the people that I remember, my aunts, uncles, they all are not alive and they were young. They all died pretty young. So that was one lesson. Watching the wrong examples and figuring out what's the right thing to do off the wrong examples, if that makes sense.
Oh, that makes a
So
lot of
yeah, that
sense.
that that kind of steered me in that direction. Then also too, just having people sometimes that I didn't even know just giving me little nuggets, dropping a little wisdom. I remember a guy used to always say, "Man, chew with your mouth closed. You chewing that gum and you doing this and you smacking. That's called smacking." He said,
Mm.
"Real young men don't chew with their mouth open." I can't tell you what this guy's name is to this day. But
Hmm.
it's like things like that I remember in my consciousness. And those things were like, there are good people that want to help you, and they don't always come from your family.
Phenomenal. So fast forward, now you're in the media. You've got this. You got this amazing. Let's see. Can't even really see it. Curriculum.
Yep.
You familiar with this?
Yes,
Can't even really
sir.
see it.
Right
Background
here.
ain't letting it happen. There it is. You got a better background than me. I got to put on the black. You got the curriculum. I ain't gonna tell you how I got it, but it fell into my lap. Somebody was trying to put me on. I said, man, I know that guy. You're working with a lot of young people. Some of them call them troublemakers. Some of them run the other way when they see them. Tell us about your young people, man. Um, how are you able? And I see it. I see you changing lives through sports and through these workshops and mentoring. Doesn't look like you yelling at them and getting on them. But how are you changing the lives of so many young people through mentoring today?
Yeah, honestly, for me, it's not necessarily a formula, but it is a blueprint. I think just being truly in touch with yourself authentically. And for each individual, that may be expressed differently. So I've learned to figure out who Vondale Singleton is, authentically. Like, Vondale Singleton is a pretty cool dude once you get to know him. Like, and I had to realize that I have to live with myself. I have to live with my actions, decisions, and choices. Some haven't been the best decisions and choices that I've made, but I've learned from them. And from that experience, extending that to another person and being in that space, whether they're a young person or adult person, I realized that I had something to offer. That my mentor put some things in me when I was 17, and I didn't even know he put them in me. I didn't know that he had put in a spirit of empathy in me, but he empathized with my situation. And he showed me he never judged me, he never criticized me, he never ostracized me, he never ridiculed me. He accepted me for who I was. And that's the first thing for me. No matter if a young man is coming with criminal background, ex-offender, just got out of jail on a ban, on the block in the hood, just, did some crazy stuff. If they coming into my space, I have an opportunity to extend empathy. And that empathy is a very powerful thing. It's not a weak thing. A lot of people think, oh man, you got empathy, you must be weak, you must be soft. No, to have empathy, you have to be very strong, mentally, physically, emotionally, because what you're doing is you're saying, I want you to be better than where you are. And sometimes I want you to be better than me. And that's a selfless act, is to say, I want you to have more faster than I attained it. I want you to experience more than I ever experienced at the age you're at. And so authentically connecting and reconnecting with individuals that look like me, and realizing that when I see another young person, especially a boy, a young man of color, that's Vondale Singleton at whatever age they're at. I'm looking in the mirror. So who am I to have young men be somebody that they're not? My mentor never did that with me. Who am I not to extend an opportunity or create an experience that no one has scripted? And a lot of our experiences just come from the Holy Spirit. God telling me, do this. And I'm like, that's never been done before. I'm like, that's how I know it's God, because it's never been done before. And for most people, even when I share certain things, the visions that I have, they look at me and they like, I don't know if that's going to happen. But each time when I know it's from the Lord and it happens, I know it's from the Lord, not Vondale. So, but that for me, that's the biggest thing is, being my authentic self, being in touch with who I am, also being in touch with my limitations and what I have to surround myself with that I don't have as a gift or as a talent or as a skill. Being around other individuals that are highly skilled at what they do, and being okay with them shining in their own glory, just like they have to be okay with allowing me to shine in what I shine in. So, yeah, those are just a
Yeah.
couple of things that I've learned.
Wow. Wow. There are some fathers out there. I am some fathers. We have sons, and we sometimes are struggling to raise our sons, struggling to make that connection with our sons. And as a representative of some fathers, I desire to have those authentic connections, but I sometimes find my own self being overbearing, overcritical, um, preaching, sometimes doing too much. And I can see how that can push a child away, push a son further away rather than bringing them close. What can you offer up to some fathers like myself to help us uh, allow those relationships to come together naturally and authentically without pushing our young sons away?
Man, that's a deep, 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 deep thought, idea, and question all in one, right? And I think sometimes we project our own fears, our own anxieties, worries, concerns, past experiences on our seed, on our sons, on our daughters. And so the reason why we agitate them or do too much or, are short or curt with our seed is because uh, we have our own failures and fears that we have to deal with, our own past experiences. And what we're trying to say is, I don't want you to go down the road that I went down, because it's going to be hard to recover. And here's why: it's because I experienced. So the anxiety that I've experienced, I don't want you to experience it. The hurt that I've experienced, I don't want you to experience it. And so we have to be conscious and aware when our own projections and fears and pain and struggle is put on to our seed. And even for myself, my 7-year-old son, at his age, I had experienced so much trauma and so much pain and so much disappointment that I always am overly cautious, and sometimes to a fault, in the development of my son, because of the experience I had when I was climbing way up on that green generator outside of Ida B. Wells, 514 East 36th Street, apartment 202. I remember it like yesterday in
Wow.
1984.
Wow.
And bust my nose and split it. Still have the scar on my nose to this day.
Wow.
And it was a traumatic experience because in my day and time, they wasn't taking you to the hospital. So the pain that you experienced, you had to feel all of it. It was like you supposed to get stitches. None of that happened. Or the time when I was on the big wheel and my cousin's pushing his brother and he started pushing me and flipped me all the way over. And I went seemingly 15 feet in the air and came down, landed on my face, all my teeth on the ground, blood everywhere, my lips busted wide open. And those experiences, it were painful experiences, both physically and watch this, emotionally and mentally. And I think the mental and the emotional pain and experience hurt far more than the physical, and it was physically anguish, pain. And so I'm always, son, be careful. Stand next to me. Watch out. Make sure you put your hat on. It was, but that's out of
Yeah.
my own experience, and I'm
Yeah.
projecting my anxiety on him because of the trauma hasn't been rectified and dealt with. I've never had counseling to deal with those demons and dark wounds that I've experienced as a child. And so we have to be very mindful. We have to be very careful as fathers, as coaches, as mentors and teachers, not to teach or coach or mentor out of pain or the little boy in the dark. And we still trying to figure out as a grown man how to make that work in our current relationships. But that's a very deep, I think, layered conversation
Mhm.
as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah, it's worth a 3-part workshop series, brother. For some fathers. I am some father.
Sir, yeah, for real.
um, yeah, I want to move this conversation on a little bit. You said quite a few things. What do our young, because you do you work with young girls too, or is it just boys, men?
We're starting to work with young ladies, but primarily boys.
Okay, so that's good. That's fine. And no, no, this is not to minimize or disregard the young ladies, because I'm in the same place, the same position. I kind of really want to focus on young men, but I do work with the young ladies as well.
Right.
But what do our young men need to be learning today? Meaning, what do schools need to be teaching? This is schools, not Chicago public schools, not private. What do schools need to be teaching young men of color today?
Yeah, I think we lost some ground in terms of skills. And when I say skills, I'm talking about some basic fundamental skills, organizational skills, time management skills, note taking skills, and then just the ability to, you know, put a sequential order. Okay, let me get my responsibilities done first before I get on social media. Let me get my responsibilities done first before I get on the games. And I think like everything is kind of mixed in. So they gamify learning. And so it's always this you know, hey, if you do this, then you get something on the back end. And there's nothing wrong with that. I believe in incentivizing. But I also believe that educational reform, in terms of how I view it, the way schools are ran is so archaic and deprivating to an individual who is curious. So that lends itself to, I believe schools should be set up to be more entrepreneurial and develop that mindset and curiosity for each and every individual. We've tried to box, especially our boys and young men of color, in. So a lot of times a teacher may view a young person as being disrespectful when really he's just not engaged with the lesson. And the lesson isn't catered for a black boy to sit down and not use bodily kinesthetic or not use auditory or visual learning. And so if your lesson isn't designed structurally to engage that type of learner, then you will deem that learner as being disobedient, disrespectful, and, you know, just a pain in the neck. And really, he's saying that you're not feeding who I am as an individual. You're not helping me grow and expand and tap into my natural curiosity. So, you know, entrepreneurship, I think every class should be learning about financing, stocks, bonds, cryptocurrency, NFTs, like the latest of what's moving our country forward and why the rich continue to get rich is because they are not in the systems that we find ourselves in. And then on top of that, when you look at the educational system, it hasn't worked and it still isn't working. As a matter of fact, it continues to get worse, especially for a young man, a boy, a young man of color. Every negative data indicator shows that our black boys are trending down in every statistical category. We have the highest dropout rates, we have the highest detentions, the highest suspensions, the lowest GPAs, and this is all correlating to a system that we know and we speak of, the school to prison pipeline. Because without that shot, what are your chances on surviving this world outside of the educational system? And when I'm saying educational system, I'm not just formally talking about diplomas and degrees. I'm talking about license, certifications, trades. I'm talking about really exploring each individual as a diverse learner and figuring out how do we support each individual as a diverse learner adapting to this technological VR virtual reality world that we're trending towards. So I think, man, we have to figure out a way to create our own school systems and partner with those individuals who are skilled at teaching skills.
Wow, that's heavy. That's good stuff. I appreciate that response. Let me give it up for that response. It's a heck of a response. So, having said that, um, what makes for a dope school principal, a dope school leader? What makes a dope school leader, in your opinion?
Yeah, you know, I think a dope school leader, a dope principal, is quite misunderstood. And it's because they don't always follow the job description. They do what's needed when it's needed and sometimes without explanation. So there were times when I first started Champs, people didn't understand how can an assistant principal spend so much time with boys who are failing in the school system. And I used to always laugh and say, why wouldn't I spend time with the kids who need me the most? And now everybody getting it because they saw 9 years ago when Champs was just coming into fruition that people was just like, oh, he was doing social emotional learning back then. He was tapping into their emotional aptitude,
Gee
emotional
whiz.
intel, like all the terms that people were creating and coming up with to make more money. We were doing this stuff before it was ever a term to it because I
Absolutely.
knew the importance and value of it. Because remember, I was them and I knew what I needed and I
Absolutely.
knew how I can engage them beyond the four walls of the school. because most people like, man, I'm 5 o'clock, man, that's my limit. I'm out of here. But I'm like, man, 5 o'clock is when they about to turn up. Five
Yep.
o'clock is when they
Yep.
finna go over here and
Mhm.
poke somebody, put a pipe up to them and stick them up. Like, that's the time where it's bubbling up. So how do we interrupt like high peak times that we know boys and young men of color are engaging into negative indicator activities that are impacting both, one, their school, two, their home, and then three, involving themselves in the judicial system, which we know are not in their favor. Again, the school of prison pipeline. How do we interrupt and break that and offer not just intervention but prevention? And so what mentorship essentially is for me is preventative work. We don't want to wait till they get locked up, then we got to go and try to intervene and create an intervention after they didn't been through this horrible experience. I want to get the brothers before they ever get locked up and expose them, take them on a trip, take them out the city, take them out the state, take them out the country, bring them around people who are further advanced in their career that can offer experiences, apprenticeships, internships, scholarships, those types of things, because we have a fighting chance then, even if their home isn't that of, both parents in the house. And of course, 80% of our young people come from single parent homes where mothers are leading the home and working multiple jobs to provide for these young people. And so, for me, being a school leader at the time was also being willing to be misunderstood for the greater good of the individual student.
Wow. Wow. Another amazing, amazing answer. And I hope the listening audience of network chiefs and school superintendents and school principals from around the country, I hope you all can digest this, because our educational system, we're not going back to what it was to pre-pandemic. Because I hear so many school
Come on.
leaders say, we're trying to get back to, that was the last decade. And I remind people, let me say this, we are in the third decade of the year 2000. And
Yeah.
some people say, well, what do you mean? It's not 2030. No, this is the third decade. They don't
Yeah.
understand how math works. 2000 to 2009 was decade one. 2010 to 2019 was the second 10 years. 2021 to 2030 is the next decade. We're in that.
Yep.
We're in the third decade of the year 2000. We're not going backwards. We're going forward. And I am begging. I hate to beg. I hate begging. I ain't begged in so long, begging for nothing. But I'm begging educational leaders to be forward thinking about how we're going to best serve these young people today. Otherwise, they're going to tell us. They're gonna stop showing up. Y'all keep playing with these
Yep.
kids, giving them these handouts and these worksheets, and keep taking their technology away. And you know, I tell people all the time, as much as I support educational leaders and educational leadership, it's kids over administrators all day for me. I'm fighting for kids first.
Yep.
And that's why I'm the rebel rouser that I am in these spaces. I'm fighting for kids first. Then we
Yep.
could deal with leadership issues. Before we go, because it's time to wrap this thing up, man. We didn't have, man. I could sit on here with you as long as you would allow me to, but I know we got to get back to the things that we have to do. We definitely gonna bring you back. Is that Eddie? And I really want to ask you some more questions about the work you're doing at Champs, but we're gonna bring you back for another episode to talk more about that. But what are some final things or that final thoughts you want to give to the listening audience that they need to know, whether it's about you, whether it's about Champs, or whether it's about serving young Black men and young Black and brown men today? What's your kind of final thought for this edition with you today on Dope People?
Man, thanks for having me on Dope People, and definitely looking forward to coming back anytime I'm invited. But a couple of things. Number one, we have to be actively engaged within our communities. And when I say actively engage within our communities, I'm not necessarily talking about the block you live on or the street you grew up on. I'm talking about in your current sphere of influence, are you reaching back and giving back? Two, are you tapping into your own potential purpose and destiny? And how do you re-energize yourself to stay actively engaged for a long time? And so part of what I'm doing is I'm pouring into the mentees so they can take the program over. As a matter of fact, one of my first mentees, he's the program director for C.H.A.M.P.S right now. I started mentoring
Wow.
this young man when he was 14. He's 21 now, 22,
Wow.
and he's running a program. Another young man who was in that same cohort that first year, along with Christian. His name is Robert Jones. He just got off the phone today telling young men not to give up because he's playing in the NFL for the Miami Dolphins as a rookie. But he was part of that same group, 14. And I say all that to say this: it's not so much greatness in and of myself, but what I do is I remove barriers and I provide safe spaces, right,
Mm.
so that they can explore and enhance themselves. They may look and say, Mr. Singleton, it was you that gave me the opportunity. I said, no, it was you that took it. I just created the space. So I want to encourage somebody, create the space, right? Find an opportunity within your community, within your sphere of influence to be actively engaged within the community. It is so vitally important that no one is on the sideline. Everybody's in the game or on the sidelines coaching those individuals who are playing in the game.
Vondale, before we get out of, man, how can someone, if they want to get their young person involved in your in Champs mentoring program?
Yeah, so we have open enrollment for C.H.A.M.P.S male mentoring program and young men every single day, and we're really blessed to be able to do so. Are going online at www.champsmentoring.com, and you'll see the Join Us button. Click that button, fill out the application. Once you fill out the application, someone from our team will add you into our mailing list and then invite you out to our sessions. We do orientations, and then also we assign every young man with a mentor. We have mentor coaches and mentor supervisors, so no one is missing a boat. And then we ask you to join us on Saturdays, which typically are 10 to 2 o'clock p.m., 10 a.m. to 2 o'clock p.m. at the Gary Comer Youth Center, and we meet weekly.
That's what's up. So if you want to get your young person involved, you as the parent or caregiver have to make the commitment to get them to where they need to be when they need to be there. And if you want to be serious about having your young person make those gains and being involved, here's the link. Hit them up, do the work. And it seems like Vondale and Champs, the guys over at Champs Mentoring, they got you. So appreciate that.
Yeah, we got
Appreciate
you.
you sharing that.
Absolutely.
Wow, brother. Wow. Phenomenal, man. Phenomenal, man. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you on this edition of Dope People, the place where we highlight what amazing people doing amazing things. Mr. Vondale Singleton, an absolute pleasure to have you on. Cannot wait to get you back. Keep being amazing. Keep creating impact. Keep working with those young people. Keep being the leader that you are. Keep being dope. You already know what it is. Until next time, people, peace.